We've got a question. This one's from a listener. You can email us questions at askjoedimatteo.com. That's questions at askjoedimatteo.com. It's from Linda. She said, I need to take 1,200 milligrams of calcium due to bone density test results. Calcium tablets now contain other ingredients such as D3. I'm already taking vitamin D3. Should I stop this or get calcium with magnesium or other suggestions? Thank you, Linda. Well, thank you, Linda. Joey?
Good question. Very common. So I guess I'll start with the calcium part.
Sure.
She mentions 1,200 milligrams. That's where it can get a little complicated. I also think anytime, I know for me, when I'm looking at supplements that are nutrient-based, you're not talking anything herbal, not talking anything kind of amino acid, different, specific, that's, hey, these are things we get in our diet. So when there's a recommended number, where to be getting from our diet? So 1,200 milligrams is what's recommended for those over 51. And for reference, the upper safety limit is referenced more around 2,000. So I looked up just some common foods. You hear of milk, cheese, those kind of things. Milk has like 300. The other big one are green leafy vegetables, collard greens, broccoli rabe, kale, even soy as well. 175 in soy, between 100 and 200 in broccoli, etc. So, you can get it, but we're talking pretty specific. How many people are really eating the green leafy vegetables, not iceberg in a salad,
right?
But the actual green leafy vegetables that are mentioned. And what I thought was interesting was meat. I always think of meat, protein, iron.
Yeah.
No calcium. 10 to 15 milligram per 3 ounces in beef, 12 to 17, 3 ounces in chicken, like
totally
negligible.
Yeah.
So the 1,200 will kind of start there is total.
Okay.
Doesn't mean 1,100, 1,300 that's the general, that's what you're going for. So do you absolutely need that much given, what diet may be, maybe not, but that's where it comes from. So I think the most simple answer, and probably not the kind of answer you would expect in a podcast like this, is that the calcium carbonate or calcium citrate that you would find, kind of, I always reference like the grocery store type supplements, is okay.
Yeah.
If it's carbonate, that's the most common one, but these are very cheap, very easy to get. Okay. If it is carbonate, take it with food. Caution in patients on antacids, whether PPIs, H2 blockers. Really what that's about in terms of taking with food, and why I linked it to the antacid use, is that you need stomach acid to absorb this properly. So food, eating will stimulate that. And then you may say, well, yeah, I'm on Protonix, but it's because my acid is so high. But typically what you're seeing, you could have an issue with the esophageal sphincter. Typically what you see on those is the acid level gets suppressed so low that even though maybe it came from an initial diagnosis of what could have been elevated acid production, where you're functioning right now may be low. So just be aware of that if that's the route you tend to go. Choose to go. Calcium carbonate also can cause some GI distress. So just be, aware of that. Citrate, a little bit, maybe of a better option, less GI upset, is a little more bioavailable, still cheap, still easy to find, doesn't have that dependence on food and stomach acid. Very reasonable option. The vitamin D question, unless your level is documented to be high, it's not like you would need to avoid the amount of vitamin D that's in here. So I'm just going to assume maybe she's taking something just supplementally kind of on her own, 1,000 units.
Yep.
She may be getting 400 or 800 from like a calcium vitamin D combo product.
Okay.
Practically speaking, is pretty negligible.
Yeah.
Now she said, hey, I've been on this prescription one and I've been taking this high dose and I don't get my level checked. Then maybe.
Yeah.
But if you've been recommended a high dose because your level's low, you're not moving the needle there. If you're taking a low dose because you've just heard it's good for you, which it is, it's not really going to move the needle. So either way, I wouldn't, make any decision based on that. All that said, though, as for any of us, but especially as we age, Depending if you're in a cold climate, we always recommend you get your D level checked.
Yeah.
Got bone density issues. Vitamin D is not going to be the be all end all, of course, but it's certainly a factor. Get that level checked if you haven't already. And then that can even answer some of this question as well. You may not be taking enough, you may not need that extra one if your level is really good. Maybe you're outside a lot, et cetera. So it's just, that's kind of a standing recommendation, but I wouldn't make any decision on the product you choose based on vitamin D and whether to stop taking that one. I can't see anything wrong with her continuing what I assume maybe is just a low dose one she's taking on her own, given the issue that she has.
So if I heard you, barring unique extenuating circumstances of somebody actually having excessively high vitamin D levels, which is an exceedingly rare thing, especially in modern America.
Exactly.
Not only is there no reason to not double up, it's fine and probably beneficial.
That's essentially what I'm saying.
Okay.
Yes, it's an important question, but it's also kind of like a non-issue.
Yeah.
Ultimately is why, and that's why.
Good to double check. Don't sweat it. And then as far as the magnesium or other suggestions, you're talking the citrate and the carbonate, those are different forms of magnesium, calcium. Thank you. Mm-hmm. And you're saying it's not a big deal unless you're on a PPI.
Yeah,
or
we'll
something
unpack
like
that a little more, but the difference between those two, carbonate is fine, unless GI distress, unless you're on an antacid, and if you take it with food. The citrate probably is just the easier option overall, less GI distress, little bit better of a product.
Yep.
And then no issues taking with or without food. So if you're going kind of the super simple route, and we'll get a little deeper here.
Yeah.
If you're going the simple route, which again is okay, I'd probably in the coin flip go with citrate if that's the route you're going.
Okay. All right. Very cool. Now let's get into some of these questions behind the question here.
Yeah.
So she's got bone density issues, it seems like. You said 1,200 milligrams is the recommended dose for women over 50.
Anyone over 51.
Okay.
Yep.
I know that osteoporosis and osteopenia are huge issues, especially for older folks and especially for older women. What else is going on here? I mean, we're kind of guessing based on the question, but it seems like that's a substantial issue here.
Yeah, I feel like we can maybe answer a little more than what she's directly asking, but like you said, kind of the question behind the question. So I think, we're on doing this health podcast, and I just said it's okay to take calcium citrate or calcium carbonate, and like I get that that's probably like why that's not real helpful. What's going on here? And again, I just want to emphasize that it's okay if you're listening to a podcast like this. You've been documented and tested to have low bone density. And maybe your attitude is not so much like, hey, this is what my doctor said, I'm just going to go with it, but what's the best that I can do and why? The nuance to it would be that there are some products and forms of calcium that can do a little more for you.
Okay.
And I think always remember too, and I know we talk about this, but a doctor's typically making a recommendation like this with a broad approach.
Yep.
What can he recommend that's going to be cheap, that's going to be simple, that's not a prescription item, that just kind of gets the ball rolling, that is okay and good.
And people are going to do it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Because then if you come on here and say that calcium carbonate and citrate don't do anything and they're terrible and they're going to lead to calcification, and you go that route and you go against what's a very reasonable recommendation from a doctor, I just feel like that's doing you a disservice.
Yep.
If that's the average recommendation, that is okay. If you're here and you want to go a little deeper, we got something for you. It's essentially where we're going.
All right. Well, tell me about that.
Yeah.
What else we got?
Yeah. I would be remiss not to mention dealing with bone density. And that's typically coming with advanced age, et cetera, postmenopausal women, exercise, but specifically weight-bearing exercise. This is more Dante's wheelhouse, sticking kind of to the supplements in this segment. Mm-hmm. And he has addressed that in a previous episode, I believe.
We did a whole two-parter on osteoporosis. It was in the 40s, 46 and 47. I looked it up.
That's a critical element here. I need to mention that as we kind of, unpack some of the supplements.
So if you want to know more about osteoporosis and osteopenia, real deep dive, we did 2 full episodes on that subject, episodes 46 and 47. Go check them out. Okay, back to this conversation.
Yeah. So again, we're discussing pretty basic nutrients that are found in food.
Yep.
Kind of went over that. But I think what's also important is just to mention that these nutrients in particular, it's very common to be deficient in. Okay. So, I read the list of calcium content, not super easy unless you're eating a lot of green leafy vegetables and a lot of dairy. And there may be other issues why maybe you're avoiding that.
A lot of people don't eat dairy for dietary
And there's
reasons.
certainly some fortified foods and things like that you can get. But there are epidemiological studies, national surveys of Western developed countries. This isn't one of those worldwide and you're looking at, nutritionally deficient areas. These are Western developed countries. 70% of people aren't obtaining that average requirement of vitamin D.
Wow.
60% aren't reaching it in magnesium. 33% aren't reaching it in K. 40% are not reaching it in calcium.
Wow.
Is that 100%? Is it impossible to get these from your diet? Of course not. We always, our foundational approach is to get these nutrients from your diet. But the reality is what I just said.
Yep.
Okay. So, and as we age, the nuances come in here too. The dietary changes typically aren't positive as you start getting older. People may be eating less in general, maybe going more processed route. Further, medications.
Yeah.
Many medications, like we already mentioned, the antacid, if you're taking your calcium supplement, but there are plenty of medications that can decrease the absorption of the nutrients that you're taking in, especially again, as we age. So again, basic recommendation, carbonate and citrate is okay, is fine. But something like calcium hydroxyapatite.
Okay. That
is the form that we have in one of our products in Bone-Based Essentials. Chelated calcium, especially chelated with malate. These forms are much more bioavailable. That again means the body can better and more efficiently utilize them. Okay. Calcium hydroxyapatite is actually calcium combined with phosphorus. And that's essentially the bone matrix. That's what makes up your bones. That's how your body, so basically when you take in calcium alone, it's got to form that matrix. This not only already has it done, but it does so in a way that your body still absorbs very well.
Okay. And that's the bone support?
That's in Bone-Based Essentials.
Bone-Based Essentials.
Mm-hmm. So a 2020 study compared 851 women divided into two groups, a calcium carbonate group, a calcium hydroxyapatite group. They measured bone density at the lumbar spine, okay, after 3 years of follow-up. The hydroxyapatite group remained stable, and the calcium carbonate group declined 3.1% in 3 years.
Okay.
So not a groundbreaking difference, but it is significant.
Yep.
And the other layer, and that goes back to even just what we said about okay versus best.
Yep.
Okay. But I think what's important too is that the calcium amounts, the elemental calcium that you see was 70% in the hydroxyapatite group. So you can see the absorption. So you had better results with less actual elemental calcium because of the absorption, because of the bioavailability.
That's great. Okay.
And in that study, there's no mention of some of the other nutrients, K2, magnesium, vitamin D. Those are critical for bone health, and we'll get to those. It was just an apples to apples comparison of the calcium itself.
Yep.
So magnesium is also in Bone-Based Essentials, but it's also very important in bone health. And it only comprises 1% of our actual bones, the bone mineral density. So it can often be overlooked. The catch is that when that number drops below 1%, when there is insufficient magnesium in the bones, in the diet, in the blood, especially in a form that's not very absorbed, the bone matrix, that calcium hydroxyapatite bone matrix, the molecules themselves become bigger and become more brittle. So magnesium in that absorbable malate form enhances not only the absorption of calcium, but of vitamin D as well.
Okay.
So a few layers again to how that helps.
Yeah.
K2.
I've heard that paired a lot with D3.
Yes. And we'll kind of talk about how they work together. So K2 helps to bind the newly absorbed calcium to the bone matrix. And it does so by activating the protein osteocalcin. So there's the whole mechanism of how it's working. It decreases the activity and regulates osteoclasts. Osteoclasts are cells that help break down bone.
Okay.
So it regulates and decreases their activity. So from a more broad health standpoint, it has a role in increasing the activity of MGP, or matrix GLA protein, which decreases the calcification of arteries. So it's interesting to see how they kind of work together, not just in the bones, but in the body as well, with what it's doing with the calcium when you take it.
So that seems that would be useful for a lot of folks for a lot of reasons.
Yes. And then the vitamin D link vitamin D is essential for the absorption and utilization of calcium by the body. But beyond absorption, it also plays a role in increasing the reabsorption of calcium from the kidneys. Helps you to absorb it in the gut, helps your kidneys to reabsorb it as well. So again, we're back to the link of D and K2. So D is helping you to kind of keep and absorb the calcium. K2 is kind of what are you doing with that calcium? It's helping to put it in the bones,
in the places you want it,
and to help prevent the calcification of arteries, which, as we've seen at mega doses of calcium, definitely can be an issue. So it's interesting, again, how these all work together. A Japanese study of 172 postmenopausal women randomized into two groups. One group was D3 alone. The other group was D3 and K2 together. So nothing about, no difference about calcium. They kept those D3 doses the same. They just looked at these two ingredients, found higher bone density levels and lower rates of hip fractures in the K2 and D3 supplement group.
Oh, that's fantastic, because that's the big problem.
The endpoints and yes. And so again, that was just looking at that. So again, the goal here would be, okay, you've got that nugget about the D3 and K2 together. You know, D alone is good, but now you've got the link with K2. You got a better form of calcium.
Yep.
You see magnesium's role, the bioavailability of the calcium that you have, you're kind of putting it all together versus isolating these one things.
That makes sense. Why we would call it bone-based essentials. That really helps cover all the bases. Okay.
Exactly.
Very cool. Anything else in that one that we need to talk about?
No, I think if bone-based essentials is the route you want to go, 3 per day.
Okay.
Ideally, maybe split them up, 2 in the morning, 1 later in the day, but 3 a day is the most important thing. If you're doing it all at one time, it's okay.
Okay. Very cool.